Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In this episode, we're talking about evolving fraud trends in retail with Kim Sutherland, Vice President of Fraud and Identity from LexisNexis Risk Solutions. We explore strategies for mitigating fraud risk while maintaining a seamless customer experience and gain insights from their latest True Cost of Fraud study, which revealed the significant financial impact on businesses globally. Discover how enterprises balance investment in fraud prevention with profitability, leveraging technology and data analytics to effectively detect and combat fraudulent activity. Kim, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I am great. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm assuming it's the afternoon. Where are you? Where am I finding you?
I am in lovely Alpharetta, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta, and it is slightly after. It just turned afternoon.
All right. Very good. We're on the same timeline. I forget about Atlanta. It's funny. I'm in Toronto, but we're in a straight line straight down. Love Atlanta. Well, that's fantastic. Now, where are you born? Are you a native to the region, or where'd you grow up?
I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and have lived throughout the Midwest, but I have been in the Atlanta area for the last 18 years, spending my days working for LexisNexis Risk Solutions.
And you've been with LexisNexis the whole time?
I have 18 years.
Wow, that's great tenure. All right. Well, listen, we kind of jump right in. How did you find your way, and what do you do at LexisNexis Risk Solutions? Tell me about how you got there and what you do for a living.
Yeah, so I don't think anybody takes a straight path into the things that we do. And mine definitely was not a straight path. I went to undergrad and grad school at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, again, kind of in that Midwest, Southeast kind of area. Yeah. Focused on things like public policy and at-risk populations, and then got an MBA in Ohio, focusing on business management and technology and mergers and acquisitions, actually. And kind of took all of those combinations, ended up at LexisNexis after spending a lot of time in the telco space and helping businesses try to improve customer interactions. So now I lead our fraud and identity market strategy for U.S. and Canada. I work with a great team that tries to understand the existing and emerging trends around consumer identity and how to protect the identities. And how business can safely and efficiently interact with their customers, basically, in person and remotely. So we stay very busy, and day to day, what we're really doing is trying to develop the solutions to offer the market to help protect everything from onboarding of new customers and keeping out bad ones, supporting safe purchases, and making sure we have the right offerings for our clients.
Well, tell us all about LexisNexis Risk Solutions. Now, in my mind, LexisNexis, I know them as an information portal from many, many years ago, but that doesn't sound like what exactly you do. So tell us all about what we need to know about the organization.
So that was my first interaction, too, in graduate school. But LexisNexis Risk Solutions is part of RELX, and RELX is a global provider of information-based analytics and decision tools focused in that B2B space. And the goal is just to enable businesses to make better decisions. So that's why you're familiar with like the portal concepts. Sure. But we have over 33,000 employees in the RELX family, and we're in 40 different countries, our offices. But, every day our company focuses on helping businesses across a wide range of industries, including retail and e-commerce, to solve daily business challenges around adding new customers, protecting against fraud, making better credit risk decisions, trying to have better due diligence processes, even customer data management.
Now, you kind of answered a little bit of my next question, which was kind of scope and scale of the business. Talk about operating. Your remit includes Canada. How busy, and talk about your work, the organization's work in the retail sector, obviously in e-commerce and retail and in Canada. Talk a little bit about that. I mostly have a Canadian audience, so give us some context of what you do here in the Great White North.
So you said that you love Atlanta. Well, we love Canada. Toronto especially. I'll be there in May. So I look forward to seeing that. But, we, in addition to having offices in 40 locations. We actually have customer and transactions that we protect globally in every country, except for maybe not North Korea, a few places like that.
Okay.
But
a few outliers.
Annually, we assess the risk and protect over 100 billion transactions globally. And that scale is really important when it comes to things like fighting fraud, because we believe in sharing those insights across our network. So we support retail and e-commerce merchants in so many ways, especially in it doesn't matter if it's Canada, and that's becoming a growing area, but also cross-border transactions, right? We have a lot with U.S. and Canada being great trade partners. So we see a lot of transactions cross-border that we help assess the risk around. Our goal is to support retail and e-commerce merchants as they approve payments and fulfill purchases, prevent abusive behaviors with coupon and loyalty programs. We're seeing those types of things increase. Even as customers evolve from being a guest checkout to creating an account for repeat purchases, or even looking at age-restricted products, location-restricted products, digital and physical goods. So we do a lot around retail and e-commerce, and a growing amount of that is happening in Canada. It is, for me, it's my top growth area. We put a lot of attention to our Canadian customers, and are very proud to have them work with us.
So we're on the mic today. Your people sent me this big study, the True Cost of Fraud study. So that's I'll put a link into the show notes to the study, but it's an epically large study. It's a great study, and it's great to see Canada involved in that. I wanted to take a quick step back before we get into the study findings. You've got almost 20 years of experience. How has fraud trends evolved in the retail sector? I mean, when I talk to retailers and loss prevention and asset protection, and then when I talk to law enforcement people, they talk about, you have nation state actors now, you have non-nation state actors, you've got ORC, organized retail crime, you've just got this potpourri of bad actors. How have you seen that evolve, and what challenges are these presenting to merchants today and maybe tomorrow?
Fraud is evolving and growing. We've not had a situation where fraud has been stagnant, right? Unfortunately, there are always going to be bad actors. Yeah. The good news is the majority of individuals are good actors, right? What we experience is more good than bad in our daily lives, and we see that same thing in e-commerce. So the big challenge for merchants is always, how do they ensure that they're giving the best experience, the thing that brand making experience to their good customers, and not let those bad actors interfere with their business processes.
That's a great point, because as we always used to say in my retail career, let's not design a process around bad outcomes that are a relatively small percentage, right? I think that's what you're saying as well.
That's right. And so even though it's a small percentage, it could have a big dollar impact. That's the big challenge, right? So doing that is something that I think retail e-commerce merchants have even more concerns around, because sometimes they only get one chance to have that relationship with that customer. I think that of all the types of industries that we support, I just think that retail e-commerce companies spend a lot of time thinking about that customer experience, because it has such a significant impact on their brand. But fraud continues to be a real challenge. But I think that more and more merchants are becoming aware of the types of solutions. They don't have to do everything by themselves, right? They don't have to build out their own solutions. There's great technology out there. There's great data to help them in making better decisions.
So let's talk about the report itself. What trends have you seen and are reported in the report, and how's it evolved in the past year, and what do you think's behind all that? What's driving these changes?
Yeah, so the True Cost of Fraud study is something that we have done for over 15 years. And what we wanted was a double-blind study. We don't know who is taking the study, and they don't know that we are the sponsors of the study. And that's important to us, to be able just to get really great insights from these industry professionals and dealing with what they're experiencing. So we're seeing a lot around the overall impact on fraud, and that one of the things that we look at is the cost, hence the name True Cost of Fraud, that the actual fraud costs are usually 3 to 4 times the actual loss
Well, that's interesting.
to the fraudster.
Unpack that for us. How does that work?
Yeah, so when you start thinking about accounting for the fees, the actual face value of the fraudulent transaction, and the cost of replacing the stolen or lost merchandise, and all of the solutions now that are starting to be used to help in trying to provide stricter verification processes or not negatively impact the customer experience. That is actually a significant cost to businesses. So trying to find ways to make that as efficient as possible is where businesses really spend their time making things better, because it is a very costly process, right? So if you lose a $10 transaction, it really feels like $30 or $40 to a company.
Yeah. Well, I also I would follow up on one of those things you said is that, retailers are often, when I talk to them, is like, am I putting too much into this? That fine line between, if I overinvest, in other words, in fraud mitigation, maybe I'm just better off there's a better sweet spot. Have you kind of touched on that a little bit, because you're basically rolling that up into the cost of fraud. In other words, you're pricing in fraud prevention with the total cost of fraud. Is there a sweet spot that you're finding with retailers that they and how they think about that?
Yeah, more retailers are not thinking that fraud is just the cost of doing business. And I'm glad to see that, right? Margins can be slim sometimes. So it's really important to try to address those concerns that retailers are experiencing. They're all caught between this, how do I make things safe for a customer, and how do I give them the great experience that they want to give? But consumers are really starting to be picky about the retailers they work with. If a retailer has a high amount of fraud, consumers actually are shying away from them. So it is very important that the experience that the retailer has in fraud does have an impact to the end customer as well.
Now, are you reflecting that the end customer would start to perceive a lot of barriers, or let's call it friction, to processing and just doing an honest transaction? They're like kind of shying away and trying to find a retailer who finds a better blend of those two. Is that what you're saying when the consumer is tending to make choice about retailers who are having or experiencing less fraud?
I think customers are becoming much more savvy. They respect businesses that are trying to protect them. We're all becoming more aware of the added experiences, whether it be, as you're logging into your email and they're asking you to do 2-factor authentication or something else. I mean, I think that when you don't see protections, it becomes a red flag is this a legitimate business that I'm even working with? Or what are they doing? If they want me to save my credit card so I can make subsequent purchases, are they going to protect my information?
Well, that's a tough one, eh? That's, I've been in e-commerce for a long time, and sometimes I hesitate. Do I really want them to save it? Is it okay? I mean, who was it that somebody said to me, a CSIO? I said, listen, there's two types of businesses: those that have been hacked and those that don't know it yet or haven't been yet. So as much as and harder you try, the bad guys try pretty hard too, right?
That's right. I mean, this fraud is a professional business.
Yeah.
And so, and they operate as a network. And so that's why it's so important for businesses also to operate in a network effect as well, sharing the intelligence with each other. And so those are the kind of things that the true cost of fraud, continues to look at. Things as simple as the shift to digital that's been going on for many years is continuing to have impacts, right? It's digitization. Continues to transform the industry. And what we saw is that 1/5 of transaction volume now occurs via digital payment methods, buy now, pay later, cryptocurrency. Digital transactions are driving over half the revenue for merchants. And even if they do have a brick and mortar front, so people start their transactions online often, and then they might pick up in store, and all of these schemes that we saw before COVID, but then have continued to really be effective in ways that consumers enjoy engaging with merchants post-pandemic. The real risk, though, is that as digitization continues, fraud has grown faster in digital channels than in non-digital channels. And that, I think, is really important.
Let's talk about strategies. Let's move to kind of a recommendation part and tap into your wisdom and insight and experience. You talk to a lot of retailers. You guys are really experts in this. What are the strategies you recommend for retailers to kind of balance the safety and experience? So, and what role do you guys play in all that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one thing, again, that we've touched on a few times is just trying to balance the security procedures with that great customer experience. And the best way that we've seen for it to work with merchants is to pay attention to the multiple aspects of an identity. You and I both have a digital identity. So the devices we use, where we're transacting from, the email address that we have, even things that are more behavioral, like how we're even interacting on a website or typing and those kind of things. That's important, but none of those tell me about Kim Sutherland, right? So we need to care about the digital identity and the physical identity. The
digital can be, what I worry about sometimes is how easy it is to spoof a digital identity. You guys pierce that veil in some ways with your insights?
We do. I think the digital identity challenge or assessing a digital identity also requires us to respect the privacy expectations of a customer as well. Mm-hmm. Some people don't like cookies on their devices, for example. So if they're going to wipe cookies, then you can't rely only on a cookie-based approach on a device. And so we leverage fraud analytic models that allow us to not rely on putting things that could be seen as negative to a customer, like a cookie-based approach to things. So, but that's only the digital part. And you're right, people can have multiple digital identities. I have 13 email addresses. Don't ask me why.
Yeah, let's hang on that for a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I like to organize things. So if I'm doing all of my coupons and stuff, I have a different email address than when I'm, having things around making significant payments and keeping up with my business aspect of my life, right? So I have lots of different email addresses, but it's still one digital identity overall. And being able to link those email addresses to the same device. I have two phones, a work phone and a personal phone, right? All of those.
Come on, you got a third phone. You got a burner phone, right?
No, I do not.
Come on. You don't have a burner? I got a burner phone.
That's kind of shady.
I run TikTok on my burner phone. I got a burner phone.
TikTok behavior is a different issue. We can talk about that later.
Yeah. All right. So is there some kind of, when you first meet with, you'll sit down, you'll come up, you'll meet with some senior executives, retailers. Is there is there a formula? Is there a benchmark of how much I should be investing in this and what role you play? Is that kind of a typical first question, or at the end of the first meeting, it's like, okay, how do I understand, how do I index your services into what I'm doing today?
Yeah, I think we first start with understanding how much they understand what is happening in their current business. A lot of times people are not even aware of the types of fraud that they're encountering. And we want to understand where they are placing their focus. So it first starts with just, really getting a good measurement of what's happening, and then how much their fraud risk. Because all transactions are not the same level of risk. If they have low risk activity, then they should not try a sledgehammer approach in the process.
So I would expect out of country, in a kind of a concentric circle way, out of country is higher risk, but America is much lower risk than if you're doing business in, somewhere else in the world. Is that a kind of a fair statement, that concentric circle from a risk perspective?
There is increasing risk when you do cross-border transactions or take in international business, but some companies think that they only operate in Canada, for example, and they don't realize how many transactions are coming from outside of Canada to them. Mm-hmm. So understanding where your transactions are coming from is a really important piece, but it's also about understanding if there's different identity personas that may be higher risk. So maybe people who shop in the middle of the night are different, or people that use a certain type of device.
They are. I used to run the QVC of Canada. They're different.
And being able to look at the velocity of activity and understanding that there are fraud rings. There's also things like mules, right? People are unwittingly involved in scam activity right now. So trying to help, in identifying any of those behaviors and having a solution that can easily integrate into a company's business processes. That's kind of what LexisNexis Risk Solutions tries to focus on, offering a risk-based layered approach to augmenting what companies are doing already. There's probably some things that we can leverage that they already have in place, and then we can help augment those. And so that's the type of one of the best practices that we talk about, having a layered approach, dealing with that physical identity. So Kim at this particular address, and the digital identity, how I'm interacting online, pulling those together and looking also at past transaction behavior, right? So it's probably not a one-time situation.
Right. And let's talk about the organization as we kind of bring our time to a close. Who you write for? Like, there must be a size of organization that you prefer to work with, some scale. Give me a sense. You're probably not a solution necessarily for small independent retailers. Like, what is the size and scale of your typical customer?
Our customer base ranges all sizes, right? I do think that there is probably a size that might be too small, where we would work with a reseller in that situation, right? That maybe is dedicated to working with very small businesses. But most mid-size and larger organizations, enterprise, there's probably not a size too large for us. And then most mid to smaller customers, we have ways to deliver our solutions to help support them as well. So we try to have a broad set of capabilities that can be delivered through an existing platform that you may be using today, or you can code directly to our offerings.
All right. Well, this has been a great discussion. Now, we barely scratch the surface, right? We could be talking a long time about this. So where do folks go to learn more and then get in touch if they want to go beyond? Like I said, we'll put a link in the show notes to the report, but where can they go to keep up on this stuff and get in touch?
The true cost of fraud, like I said, has been around for many years, and sometimes looking at those historical trends is also very helpful. We also provide a number of other thought leadership tools and reports that are available, and you can go to risk.lexisnexis.com, and LexisNexis is spelled LEXISNEXIS. And I only bring that up because people sometimes get us mixed up with the car or the shampoo. And so, but it's risk.lexisnexis.com, and there are a ton of amazing thought leadership pieces and research that you can see.
Well, Kimberly, thanks so much for being my guest on the show. I think we barely scratched the surface but added a lot of insight and value as people think about these things. So once again, thanks so much for joining me and for continuing to do the great work you do. And when you're in Toronto, I look forward to getting together. So if you're in Toronto, I'm in Toronto, maybe we'll be in the same place at the same time. So until then, thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
It has been an honor. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.